The massive council chamber buzzed with the chittering sounds of a dozen different alien species as Admiral Kate Sullivan walked through the curved doorway. Her black uniform stood out against the rainbow of colors that filled the room. 6-armed, crystalline beings clicked their fingers against their chest plates, while floating jellyfish-like creatures pulsed with angry red lights. The air tasted of metal and ozone from all the different breathing systems working at once. Kate had seen this room angry before, but never quite like this. The Vorthan Empire representatives sat on one side with their thick gray skin gleaming under the artificial lights. Their leader, General Thos, kept flexing his massive hands while his small black eyes glared across the room. On the other side, the bird-like Keluran Confederacy delegates ruffled their silver feathers and made sharp clicking sounds with their beaks. Ambassador Veltar stretched her long neck high and proud like she was ready to strike. Both groups wanted the same thing. The asteroid belt in the Kepler 186 system held enough rare metals to power 100 worlds for 1,000 years. The Vorthans claimed they found it first. The Kelurans said their mining ships had been working there for decades. Neither side would back down, and both had battle fleets moving toward the system. Kate walked to her seat at the human delegation table where Commander Jake Martinez was already waiting. His brown eyes met hers and he gave a small shake of his head. 3 months of talks and they were no closer to peace than when they started. Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her tablet where she had been taking notes about alien body language and stress signals. Council Prime. Zethkar rose from the center platform. The leader of the Galactic Council stood twice as tall as any human, with crystal skin that reflected the chamber lights in dancing patterns. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers built into his chest since his species had no mouths. The Council recognizes Admiral Sullivan of the Human Diplomatic Corps, the artificial voice announced. Perhaps humans can find wisdom where others have found only conflict. Kate stood and felt the weight of 100 alien eyes watching her. For almost a century, humans had been the ones who solved problems like this. When species could not agree, humans found the middle path. When old enemies refused to talk, humans built the bridges. She had personally ended 7 wars and prevented dozens more. Honored delegates, Kate began in the calm voice that had become famous across the galaxy. Both the Vorthan Empire and the Keluran Confederacy have legitimate claims to consider. The Vorthans discovered the system through deep space exploration. The Kelurans have maintained a research presence there for many years. Perhaps we can find a solution that honors both achievements. General Thos slammed his fist on his desk. Humans always speak pretty words, but Vorthans spilled blood to map those stars. The system belongs to us by right of discovery. Ambassador Veltar's feathers stood on end. Research stations are not blood, but they are still work and time and resources. The Kelurans have earned their place in that system through decades of patient science. Kate had heard these same arguments for months. She looked at her notes again and prepared to suggest the mining share agreement they had discussed yesterday. It would give both sides what they needed even if neither got everything they wanted. She opened her mouth to speak, then she stopped. Something cold settled in her stomach as she looked around the room. Every alien delegate was watching her with the same expression. They were not listening to find compromise. They were waiting for her to solve their problem for them. Again, Kate thought about the 17 other conflicts currently on her desk. Border disputes and trade arguments and territorial claims that could all be solved if the species involved just talked to each other like adults. But they would not do that. They would wait for humans to fix everything, while they sat back and complained about how long it took. She thought about her daughter Jenny back on Earth who had asked why. Mommy was always traveling to help. Aliens who never seemed to learn how to help themselves. Kate had not had a good answer then. She did not have one now. Commander Martinez was watching her with concern. Dr. Harper had put down her tablet. They both knew that look on Kate's face. She had made a decision. Kate Sullivan stood straight and tall. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber when she spoke. The Human Diplomatic Corps withdraws from these proceedings. The room fell silent. Even the background hum of life support systems seemed to pause. Council Prime Zethkar's crystal skin flickered with confused light patterns. Admiral Sullivan, perhaps you need a recess to consider new options, he said carefully. No recess, Kate replied. No new options. No further human participation in this matter or any other council business. She turned to Jake and Lisa. Signal all human diplomatic facilities. Immediate evacuation protocols. Authorization code Alpha 77. Jake's training took over even as his face showed shock. He pulled out his communicator and began sending the coded messages that would reach every human embassy and mediation center across the galaxy. Lisa gathered her research files with quick, efficient movements. General Thos stood up so fast his chair fell backward. Humans cannot simply leave. The Council requires your presence for maintaining galactic peace. Kate looked at him with eyes that had grown very cold. The Council requires nothing from humanity. We choose to help because we wanted to help. That choice is ending today. Ambassador Veltar's voice came out as a harsh screech. This is madness. Without human mediation, the galaxy will fall into chaos. Then perhaps the galaxy needs to learn how to avoid chaos without depending on us to clean up every mess, Kate said. She walked toward the exit with Jake and Lisa following close behind. Behind them, the chamber erupted into angry voices and frightened calls. Species that had not spoken directly to each other in decades suddenly had no choice but to face each other without human interpreters. Council Prime Zethkar's artificial voice rose above the noise. Admiral Sullivan, please reconsider. The galaxy needs human wisdom and patience. Kate paused at the doorway without turning around. The galaxy needs to grow up. Then she was gone, and the great chamber of galactic cooperation fell into the chaos that would consume 17 star systems before the month was over. 3 weeks had passed since Admiral Kate Sullivan walked out of the council chamber, and Captain Ryan Blake watched the galaxy burn from his hidden observation post. The small station hung in the shadow of a dead moon in the neutral zone, where no government claimed territory. Its sensors could monitor half the galaxy without being detected by anyone who might want to silence what they saw. Ryan sipped his coffee and looked at the display screens that filled the command center. Each one showed a different star system where violence had erupted after the humans stopped keeping peace. The Vorthan Empire and Kaluran Confederacy had started shooting at each other within hours of the human withdrawal. Now their war fleets were burning colonies and destroying trade ships across 7 systems. The screens showed other conflicts, too. The Crystalline Assembly had declared independence from the Council and closed their borders to all alien traffic. The gas giant coalition was demanding tribute from any ship that wanted to pass through their territory. 3 separate pirate groups had emerged from hiding and were raiding supply convoys with no fear of human peacekeepers stopping them. Dr. Nina Rodriguez walked up behind Ryan with her own cup of coffee and a tablet full of reports. Her job was to study how different alien species behaved under stress, and the results were not encouraging. Without humans to mediate their problems, most species were reverting to the same territorial and aggressive patterns their ancestors had used millions of years ago. The Spiral Arm news network just went dark, Nina said as she sat down next to Ryan. That makes 17 independent media outlets that have shut down this week. Nobody wants to report news that might anger their own government without human protection for journalists. Ryan nodded and switched one of his screens to show the latest casualty reports. The numbers were climbing every day. Battles that humans could have prevented with a few hours of careful negotiation were now killing thousands of beings across multiple worlds. The worst part was how predictable it all seemed once you removed human interference from the equation. Look at this, Nina said as she pulled up a communication intercept on her tablet. The Council sent another message to Earth yesterday. They are offering humanity a permanent seat on the ruling committee plus mining rights to 12 systems, if we just come back and fix things. Any response from Earth? Ryan asked, even though he already knew the answer. Complete silence, Nina replied, just like the previous 47 messages they have sent. Admiral Sullivan was not bluffing when she said humanity was done with galactic babysitting. Ryan switched his main screen to show the Kepler 186 system where the original conflict had started. Vorthan battle cruisers were trading plasma fire with Kaluran destroyers, while the asteroid field they were fighting over slowly filled with radioactive debris. Both sides were so focused on hurting each other that they were destroying the very resources they claimed to want. Ambassador Veltar tried to contact the Vorthan fleet yesterday. Nina continued reading from her reports. She wanted to propose a temporary ceasefire so they could rescue survivors from the mining stations. General Thos refused to even accept her transmission. He said talking to bird people was beneath Vorthan dignity. That was the pattern Ryan had been seeing everywhere. Without humans to facilitate communication, most alien species simply refused to speak directly to each other. They had become so dependent on human translators and mediators that they had forgotten how to have basic conversations with anyone who looked different from themselves. His communication console beeped with an incoming priority signal. Ryan accepted the transmission and Admiral Sullivan's face appeared on his screen. She looked tired but determined as she spoke from her office on Earth. "Captain Blake, I need your latest analysis of the situation," she said. "The President wants to know if our projection models were accurate." Ryan pulled up the files he had been preparing. "Admiral, the breakdown is happening faster than we predicted. We estimated 6 weeks before major conflicts would start. Instead, we got major conflicts in the first week, and now we have 3 active wars plus a dozen smaller territorial disputes." "What about economic impacts?" Admiral Sullivan asked. "Trade volume is down 60% galaxy-wide," Nina answered as she leaned into the camera view. "The major shipping companies are refusing to enter disputed territories without human escort services. Food shortages are starting on 17 worlds that depend on imports." Admiral Sullivan rubbed her temples like she had a headache. "Any signs that species are trying to adapt and solve problems themselves?" Ryan shook his head. "The opposite, actually. The Council has created something called the Emergency Mediation Committee, but it is just 12 different aliens sitting around a table waiting for someone else to make decisions. They spent 4 hours yesterday arguing about what color the meeting room wall should be painted. The psychological profiles are even worse," Nina added. "Most Council species are showing signs of what humans would call learned helplessness. They have become so used to having us solve their problems that they panic when forced to make decisions on their own. Some governments are actually asking their citizens to vote on basic policy issues because their leaders are afraid to take responsibility for anything." "Admiral," Sullivan sighed and looked older than Ryan had ever seen her. "Any hostile actions directed toward human territories?" "Not yet," Ryan replied. "But we are picking up military communications that suggest several species are considering it as an option. The Vorthan Empire is particularly angry, and General Thoss has been making speeches about human treachery and abandonment of duty." "Keep monitoring and send me daily reports," Admiral Sullivan said. "And Captain, remember that everything you are seeing now is why we made this choice. The galaxy needed to learn how to walk on its own instead of leaning on us forever." The transmission ended and Ryan was alone again, with his screens full of violence and chaos. Part of him wanted to contact the nearest Council ship and offer to help negotiate a ceasefire somewhere. The human instinct to fix problems and help others was hard to ignore even when logic said it was the wrong thing to do. Instead, he made more coffee and continued watching the galaxy tear itself apart. Because sometimes the kindest thing you could do for someone was to let them fail, until they learned how to succeed on their own. 2 months after the humans left the Council chamber, High Arbiter Click stood before the emergency assembly and tried to hide his desperation behind an official voice. The squid-like alien's tentacles writhed with stress patterns that every species in the room could recognize. Around him, the great hall that had once buzzed with productive debate now echoed with angry accusations and fearful whispers. "Fellow delegates," Clix announced through his translation device, "the Galactic Council invokes Emergency Protocol 7. All member fleets will join the Enforcement Armada for an immediate mission to the Sol system." The announcement sent waves of excitement through some delegations and terror through others. General Thoss of the Vorthan Empire slammed his massive fist on his desk in approval. His gray skin gleamed with satisfaction as he spoke. "Finally, the Council shows wisdom. Humans think they can abandon their duties and watch the galaxy burn. We will drag them back to their responsibilities whether they want to come or not." Ambassador Veltar ruffled her silver feathers nervously. The Kelleran delegate had been one of the few voices calling for patience and self-reflection over the past 2 months. Her bird-like head turned toward Clix with obvious concern. "High Arbiter, this action seems unwise. Humans chose to leave peacefully. Threatening them with military force may provoke a response we are not prepared for." The crystalline Council Prime Zethkar flickered with patterns of uncertainty. "Ambassador Veltar raises valid concerns, but the current situation cannot continue. 17 systems are at war. Trade has collapsed. Member species are withdrawing from the Council daily. Without human mediation, we face complete galactic civilization collapse." On Earth, President Alex Carter stood in the Situation Room, deep beneath the Capitol building, watching the alien fleet. Movements on holographic displays. Dr. Marcus Webb sat at a conference table surrounded by classified files that told a story the galaxy had never been allowed to see. Commodore Grace Patterson studied tactical projections with the calm focus of someone who had been preparing for this moment for decades. Mr. President, the Council, fleet now numbers 473. Ships from 12 different species, Grace reported. Their estimated arrival time at the outer system is 18 hours. President Carter was a tall man with gray hair who had spent his entire political career dealing with the consequences of humanity's galactic responsibilities. He looked tired but not surprised as he reviewed the intelligence reports that Dr. Webb had compiled. Doctor, tell me again what your research discovered. About our alien friends, the President said. Dr. Webb opened the first file with hands that shook slightly from anger rather than fear. Mr. President, our deep intelligence operations have been monitoring Council communications for 30 years. What we found was disturbing. Many of the conflicts we were asked to mediate were not natural disputes. They were deliberately created. He pulled up intercepted messages on the main display. The spiral trade war of 2341 started when crystalline assembly merchants were told by their government to demand unreasonable shipping rates from human colonies. When humans negotiated a compromise, the assembly government secretly ordered the rates raised again to restart the conflict. The border incident of 2356 between the Gas Coalition and the Ring Worlds was triggered when Coalition intelligence services spread false rumors about territorial expansion, Dr. Webb continued. They wanted to test how quickly humans would respond to a crisis in that sector. President Carter studied the evidence with growing disgust. They were using us as laboratory animals. Worse than that, sir. They were using us as a crutch to avoid developing their own diplomatic skills. Every time we solved a problem for them, they became more dependent on human intervention. They stopped trying to communicate with each other because they knew we would always step in and fix things. Commodore Patterson looked up from her tactical analysis. The psychological profiles support Dr. Webb's conclusions. Most council species show classic signs of learned helplessness when facing interspecies problems. They literally panic when forced to make decisions without human guidance. And now they are coming here with guns to force us back into our caretaker role, President Carter said. Grace, what are our defensive capabilities? Commodore Patterson smiled for the first time in days. Sir, the Council believes Earth is protected by the same small defense fleet they observed during their last official visit in 2375. They have no idea what we have been building in secret. She activated new displays that showed the true scope of human military preparation, hidden shipyards and asteroid belts, weapons platforms disguised as research stations, defensive networks that had been constructed under the cover of peaceful scientific projects. For 50 years we have been preparing for the possibility that some species might respond to human independence with violence, rather than growth, Grace explained. The Council fleet thinks they are approaching a helpless target. Instead, they will encounter defensive capabilities that exceed anything in their experience. Dr. Webb pulled up psychological profiles of the key alien leaders. The irony is that this military confrontation might actually help some species develop independence. When they realize that humans are not weak victims waiting to be rescued, they may finally start taking responsibility for their own civilization. Or they might unite against us as a common enemy, President Carter pointed out. Possible but unlikely, Dr. Webb replied. Our analysis suggests that most species joined this fleet out of desperation rather than genuine hostility. When they see that military force will not work, they will be forced to consider alternatives like actual cooperation and self-reliance. President Carter walked to the window even, though it only showed the concrete walls of the underground facility. Somewhere above them, the night sky held the approaching fleet of aliens who had decided that humanity belonged to them rather than to itself. Send a message to Admiral Sullivan, he ordered. Tell her to begin Operation Independence. It is time to show the galaxy what humans do when we stop holding back. Commodore Patterson nodded and began sending coded signals to defensive positions throughout the solar system. Hidden weapons came online. Stealth ships began moving to intercept positions. Defensive shields that had been designed to stop entire fleets powered up around Earth and its colonies. The Council fleet was about to learn that humans had never needed their protection or permission to exist in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Sam Hughes watched the Council Armada approach through the view screen of his command ship and felt a mixture of sadness and determination. 400 alien vessels moved in a loose formation that showed their complete lack of coordination without human tactical advisors to guide them. The Vorthon heavy cruisers were bunched too close together, while the Kaliran destroyers spread too wide to provide mutual support. It was exactly the kind of amateur mistake that would get them, all killed in a real battle. Admiral, the lead council ship is transmitting on standard diplomatic frequencies, reported Lieutenant Tony Kim from the communication station. High Arbiter Clicks is demanding immediate surrender of Earth and the return of all human diplomatic personnel to active duty. Sam had been expecting this moment for 30 years. As a young officer, he had wondered why Earth kept building secret weapons and hidden fleets when the galaxy seemed peaceful. Now he understood that his superiors had always known this day would come, the day when some alien species would decide that humans belonged to them rather than to themselves. "Open a channel to the entire council fleet," Sam ordered. "Let me speak to all of them at once." The communication array activated, and Sam's image was transmitted to every ship in the approaching armada. He could see dozens of different alien faces on his screens as species throughout. The fleet watched him with expressions ranging from anger to fear to curiosity. "This is Fleet Admiral Hughes of Earth. Defense Command," he began in the calm voice that humans had learned to use when dealing with emotional aliens. "You have entered the Sol system without permission and with hostile intent. You have 72 hours to withdraw to neutral space. This is your only warning." General Thoss appeared on the main screen with his gray skin flushed dark with rage. "Human Admiral, you forget your place. The Council demands your immediate surrender and the restoration of diplomatic services. You will comply or face the consequences." "General Thoss, I think you are the one who has forgotten something important," Sam replied. "You have forgotten that humans never needed Council permission to exist in this galaxy." He nodded to Captain Maya Lewis, who was waiting at the tactical station. Maya had spent 15 years training on the experimental stealth ships that no alien government knew existed. Her fingers moved across the control panel with practiced precision as she activated systems that had been hidden from galactic observers for decades. Suddenly, the Council fleet found themselves surrounded by human ships that had appeared from nowhere. Sleek black vessels materialized between their formations like ghosts becoming solid. The alien commanders shouted confused orders as their sensors tried to track targets that had been invisible moments before. "Impossible," gasped Ambassador Veltar from her flagship bridge. "Our sensors show empty space. How can human ships be there?" Dr. Tony Kim smiled from his position aboard the lead stealth destroyer. The quantum masking technology he had developed allowed human ships to bend light and radiation around their hulls. To alien sensors, they simply did not exist until the moment they chose to reveal themselves. It was just one of many innovations that Earth had perfected while pretending to be a peaceful member of the galactic community. "Council fleet, this is Captain Lewis," Maya announced from her ship that now hung directly above the Vorthan command vessel. "Your weapon systems are being targeted by quantum disruptors. Any attempt to fire will result in immediate system failure, followed by life support shutdown." General Thoss tried to order his gunners to open fire, but nothing happened when they pressed the firing controls. Warning lights flashed across Vorthan weapon displays as mysterious energy fields interfered with their plasma cannons and missile launchers. Similar problems were occurring throughout the Council fleet as human technology disabled alien weapons without causing permanent damage. High Arbiter Clicks appeared on the communication channels with his tentacles writhing in patterns of complete confusion. "Admiral Hughes, this technology exceeds anything in Council databases. How long have humans possessed such capabilities?" "High Arbiter, we have possessed these capabilities since before we joined your Council," Sam answered honestly. "We could have conquered half the galaxy if that had been our goal. Instead, we chose cooperation and peaceful development. That choice is what you are threatening today." The admission sent shockwaves through the alien fleet. Species that had considered humans to be junior partners in galactic civilization suddenly realized they had been dealing with a military power that could have dominated them at any time. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Captain Steve Morrison watched the alien reactions from his integrated task force ship, where human and alien crew members worked side by side. Steve commanded one of the few remaining vessels where different species cooperated as equals, rather than as leaders and followers. His mixed crew had volunteered to stay with Earth when the diplomatic crisis began because they believed in genuine Partnership rather than dependency, Admiral. The crystalline assembly ships are requesting permission to withdraw, Steve reported. Their fleet commander says they had no idea humans were capable of this level of military sophistication. Permission granted, Sam replied. Any species that wants to leave peacefully is free to do so. 36 crystalline ships immediately broke formation and began accelerating away from Earth. They were followed by most of the smaller delegations who had joined the fleet out of desperation rather than genuine hostility. Within an hour, the massive Council Armada had shrunk to less than half its original size. General Thoss remained defiant, even as his own officers began suggesting retreat. This changes nothing. The Council requires human compliance regardless of your technological advantages. We will not be intimidated by superior weapons. General, you still do not understand, Sam said with genuine pity in his voice. This is not about weapons or technology or military superiority. This is about the right of every species to determine its own path in the galaxy. Humans are not your property to command. Long-range sensors suddenly detected new contacts approaching from deep space. Ships that were not human or Council but something else entirely. Something ancient and hostile that had been waiting in the dark between galaxies for the right moment to return. The Devourers had chosen this moment of division and weakness to begin their invasion of organic space. Sam looked at the incoming threat and realized that the galaxy's real test was about to begin. 6 months after humanity had walked away from galactic diplomacy, Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of her flagship watching the impossible happen. The massive black ships of the Devourer fleet moved through space like living shadows consuming everything in their path. Behind them, entire star systems went dark as ancient machine. Intelligence stripped planets bare of all organic life. The emergency. Transmission from Elder Sage Crintal had reached Earth 3 days ago with information that changed everything. The ancient alien was the last living member of a species that had fought the Devourers 10,000 years earlier. His message was simple and terrifying. The machines had returned and only a united galaxy could stop them. Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from 47 Council species, reported Commander Jake Martinez from his position at the communications console. They are offering to place their entire fleets under human command in exchange for protection from the Devourer advance. Kate shook her head as she studied the tactical displays showing the approaching enemy. The Devourers had already consumed 12 systems in the Outer Rim and were moving toward the core worlds with unstoppable momentum. Their technology was beyond anything the current galaxy possessed. Only cooperation and sacrifice on a scale never before seen could possibly turn back this ancient threat. Jake, send the same message to all Council species, Kate ordered. Humanity will coordinate the defense, but we will not command it. Every species must contribute as equals, or the alliance fails before it begins. Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her analysis station where she had been studying the psychological profiles of different alien leaders. Admiral, the early responses are encouraging. Species that spent months fighting each other are now volunteering to share resources and coordinate battle plans. Fear of extinction has a way of clarifying priorities. The main screen shifted to show Captain Steve Morrison aboard his integrated vessel where human and alien crew members worked together with an efficiency that had seemed impossible just weeks earlier. Steve's ship had become the model for a new kind of galactic cooperation based on mutual respect rather than human leadership. Admiral Morrison here, Steve reported. The first mixed battle groups are forming up at Rally Point Alpha. Vorthan heavy cruisers are providing close support for Kellior fast attack squadrons, while crystalline assembly ships handle long-range reconnaissance. The coordination is actually working. Kate felt a surge of hope as she watched the tactical displays update with friendly fleet positions. Species that had refused to speak directly to each other for decades were now sharing targeting data and battle plans. The threat of complete annihilation had forced them to overcome their dependencies and prejudices in ways that centuries of human mediation had never achieved. Elder Sage Crintal appeared on the communication screen from his ancient ship at the edge of the battle formation. The old alien looked like a walking tree with bark-like skin and eyes that held the wisdom of ages. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of species that had died fighting this same enemy long ago. Admiral Sullivan, the Devourers advance in 3 waves as they did before, he explained. First, the scout swarms that test defenses and gather intelligence. Then the harvester fleets that consume resources and expand the machine intelligence. Finally, the core ships that carry the central processing units controlling the entire invasion. What stopped them last time? Kate asked. Sacrifice and unity that cost the galaxy 90% of all organic life. Crintal replied. The survivors rebuilt civilization from almost nothing. This time we must do better, or there will be no survivors to rebuild anything. The first Devourer scout ships appeared at the edge of sensor range, moving faster than anything organic technology could match. Their black hulls absorbed all electromagnetic radiation, making them nearly invisible until they began attacking. Plasma beams lanced out from the scout swarms, targeting the largest ships in the Allied formation. All units, this is Admiral Sullivan, Kate announced on the fleet-wide channel. Execute Battle Plan Omega. Remember that every species brings something unique to this fight. Trust your allies and fight as one. The battle began with a coordination that surprised everyone, including the Devourers. Fourth-hand shields absorbed the initial enemy assault, while Kaliran fighters swarmed through the scout formations using speed and agility to confuse machine targeting systems. Human stealth ships provided invisible fire support, while crystalline assembly vessels used their natural energy manipulation abilities to disrupt Devourer power systems. Captain Maya Lewis led her stealth squadron in a deep penetration attack on the enemy rear formations. Her quantum masking technology allowed human ships to appear inside Devourer defensive lines and target critical systems before vanishing again. But the real breakthrough came when alien crews began adapting human tactics to their own capabilities. Admiral, this is incredible, Dr. Harper reported as she monitored the battle data. The Kalirans are using human stealth principles with their natural speed to create hit-and-run attacks the Devourers cannot predict. The Vorthans are combining their strength with human shield harmonics to create defensive barriers twice as strong as either technology alone. The first wave of Devourer scouts was destroyed within 6 hours, but Kate knew the real test was still coming. The harvester fleets were already moving toward the battle zone with enough firepower to sterilize entire planets. Only a galaxy that had finally learned to work together as equals would have any chance of survival. All ships prepare for the second wave, Kate announced. Remember that we are not fighting for any one species or government. We are fighting for the right of organic life to exist in this galaxy. General Thoss appeared on the communication screen from his battered cruiser, with his gray skin marked by battle scars. Admiral Sullivan, the Vorthan Empire stands ready. We have learned much about cooperation in these past months. Perhaps we have also learned something about growing up. Ambassador Veltar's voice came through the static of a damaged communication array. The Kaliran Confederacy agrees. We fight not as subjects or dependents, but as partners in the defense of all life. The second wave of Devourers emerged from hyperspace like a black tide of destruction, but they faced a galaxy that had finally learned to stand together without needing anyone to hold their hand.